Hi, today I want to show you how you can improve your Wized and Webflow sites SEO by creating dynamic sitemaps for your dynamic content. So normally, if you use Webflow CMS, it is on the CMS, it's on the content management system, and Webflow will give you something called sitemap.xml. That's a file that will basically, every time you upload something to the CMS, add a new record on top of that file so that Google, thanks to that access to the file, can then know which pages your website has and then accordingly list them on Google and make them visible. But now the issue is a CMS, in terms of technical purposes, is like a static page that is being created dynamically. But if you create a dynamic page in Wized, it is just a template page that where you just add dynamic content in there. So the CMS is basically you actually create multiple pages dynamically. It's like dynamic page generation. But in Wized, you have one page, it's always the same page, and you just add a query parameter, like a value inside the URL that will then decide which content will be loaded into it. So that it's a completely different approach. Now, the issue is in Wized, as it used to be, since you always have this one page that just has, like, based on the query parameters, this different content being smashed into it, it is not recognized by Google as a real page because it's just one page. Google knows this one template page exists, but not all of the million possibilities that exist in your database that can be shown within this one page. And Webflow CMS just basically registered them for you under your sitemap.xml, and therefore it was visible for Google. But we can build this ourselves, and the best part about that, it is 100% free. So when I have my blog site right in here, or whatever it is, it can be like a content-heavy news site as well, I want those to be indexed by Google so that people see that. And there's also a big benefit, for example, if you connect your Xano database with AI, and you can have like AI write 500 blog posts a month, and to have them all listed and indexed by Google is a great content strategy as well, if you can maintain the quality of the content, of course. So I'm going to show you how to create the sitemap fully dynamically. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take our Xano database, but it works with FastGen, it works with Firebase, it works with everything. We're going to iterate over our whole database, and we're going to populate, using some data modifications, a dynamic sitemap such as this that exists not on a separate domain, but that exists on our real domain as the sitemap.xml. And every time I upload a new blog post, actually, let's try this out in Xano. Let's remove one. Let's delete one from our database, just like that. And every time I reload this, it will update instantly. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in here. And now if I reload, we will see that we have only 1, 2, 3, 4 in here. So, and then if I go back to Xano, as you can see, if I, can I undo things in here? Yes, I can. Wonderful. If I were now to reload that sitemap XML, you will see that we have that added in there again. So we populate, or we create, a 100% dynamic sitemap. And thanks to Xano and Subfold, we can do that. So let's get right started with the setup. So in Xano, first of all, I want to have a database with created at, name, the content of the blog post, or whatever it is you want to do, and then the slug. That's very important because that will be the extension to which the browser will be working. And of course, and I will be not going into this video, but you have to have the whole query parameter setup working in Wized and Webflow, that you can basically from those slugs you have in the parameter in here, render this content from your database. But I already made a video about that, and there will be even more videos coming about that as well. But that is basically like the important thing. And what we basically then want to do is, in our Xano endpoint, we want to artificially create those URLs that are actually pages on our website that are not really on our website because they're on the database. And this is how we're going to do that. So I have this endpoint in here called sitemap XML. No input is needed. And first of all, we have the first function in here called create variable. And this is what it does. It's get current human readable date. So we create this variable called current_date. We're going to give it a timestamp of now, and we're going to give it a capital Y, so we get the whole year, and a small m, and a small d. And we're going to add, in my example, time zone America, Los Angeles. And then I'm going to save that. And I'm going to now go to query all records from, so get all dynamic blog posts. Now I want to query my database, this one right here, where all my blog posts are in, to get all of them in an array. And that is exactly what I'm doing here. And then I want to create a static sitemap, because even though that this is the top part, this is the first part of the sitemap that has to be static, because the first page of my website will be my home page, and you may want to add your contact page on top of there as well, or you also may want to, for example, add your I don't know what page. Like if you have other pages that are not dynamically rendered by Wized, it's a smart move to add them in this part of the flow. So I call this variable sitemap top part, and then I'm going to have this XML file in here, or this HTML basically script, this XML script. I have my schema in here, and some things like here. And then I want to have, and this is my main domain, so I give this a high priority in this example. And I just have daily hard-coded in here, because that's just like, for SEO purposes, the best thing you can do as far as I'm aware of. But then I just have like a dynamic variable here for my main domain, last modified date, and priority. And I'll be just injecting those things dynamically. That is Wized journal.webflow.io, and I'm just going to take our variable for current date, where we have defined the date up here, and then I give it a priority of 1. That's the highest priority you can give it. And then I'm going to save this, and now we want the dynamic part of the sitemap. So, what did I do? Yeah, we got that in here. That's the sitemap top part, and now we want to create the sitemap template. So the sitemap template will basically be our final sitemap. So this will be the variable, the sitemap, that will start throughout this template, because we have to do a loop in here. We need to specify a template where we add the initial top part on here. Think of it like this. This window here is the template, just like that. And we start now adding the top part, right? And in our first loop, we add one more part. In our second time of the loop, we add another part. And in our third time of the loop, we add another part. 5th time, 10th time, whatever. And it continues like this, and that's how it populates the sitemap template. And at the end, we're going to add a little bit of HTML to close that thing. And this is like a reducer pattern we're going to do here, to start like with one part of the template, add another part, add another, and so on. And this is what we're doing here. That's why we have to define the template. Then we define a loop where we're going to go over our dynamic posts, the posts that we queried from our database, and we're going to just call the individual one post. And then I need to create artificially a URL. And this really depends on how you set things up in Wized. So I just call this page URL, and I'm going to add my text in here. So that is https wizdjournal.webflow.io, and then I'm going to do /blog. That's the page where my blog posts live on. That's a template page. A question mark for query parameter, post equals, and then we're going to add the dynamic input for query parameter, QP, and then I'm going to search for QP, and I will replace it with the current iteration. Post is the current iteration. So wherever the loop is currently on, it could be the millionth item, it could be the first item, but for this specific item, it's a bit like the iterator in Wized. For this specific item, we're going to take the slug. That is the one that lives in the database right here, and that is the one that we're going to add to the query parameter. So that when we go to this page, for example, with best AI tools, like this, and I open that in my browser, I will go actually to the page that will render this blog post. Just like that. And that is basically what we want to do in here. So I'm going to, let's just close that. That's the first part. And now we want to populate each individual sitemap item. So I'm going to now create a variable called dynamic sitemap item, and I will be defining for this current iteration, for this current item the loop is on, how we want to have that item structured. Here's the structure. We have URL, log dynamic URL, and then last modified date. Daily is again hard-coded, and we're going to give it a priority. You could even technically go in your database and add another table in here and give it a priority, depending on which blog posts are more important for your SEO. And then you could have that dynamically inserted in here too, instead of having that hard-coded in like I did. So there are really endless possibilities here for all the SEO experts to play around with this. But we're just going to replace the dynamic URL with the URL that we generated in this variable on top of here, the page URL, for this current iteration. We're going to add the variable that we defined as the first step, the current date, in here as the current date, and we hard code the priority in here. And then now we have this template. That's the template here, and we have the first template item. Now we want to add over the first template item, which is our homepage, the second one. So meaning the first one dynamic, and then the second dynamic, the third, and the fifth, and so on. And the way we're going to do that is using text append in Xano. So we just add a new sitemap item to the sitemap template. And we do this for every iteration of this loop. So if I'm going to go in here and I see dynamic sitemap template, that's the variable that will hold all dynamic sitemap templates, and we have the first one already added on top of here. And now in this example, we want it to add the second one, the dynamic one, right under here. And we're just going to take this template and we're going to push the dynamic sitemap item in here, or we're going to add it on top of the existing text. It's basically concatenate, if you know what that is. If not, it's just meaning I have this part of text and this part of text. We make it one. And I take this item here, where we have defined that, and I'm going to merge those together with a template. So when I have the first item here, the first loop will add the second item, the second loop will add the third item, and so on, for as how many things you have in your database. And then, after this whole loop finished, after we have this whole list of the sitemap, we want to close the sitemap. So we need to do an URL set. We just do the same principle. We just concatenate that. We just add that, append the text. We take the template, which now has our first static example and like dozens of dynamic examples under it. And we're going to just add now at the end the value all the way down here, URL set. And that will close it and make it a legitimate XML file. And then when we return it, now we have to tell the browser when it receives this page that this is an XML, this is a sitemap. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to do set HTTP header content type application /XML. And you have to do content type this, the C and the T in caps, just to make sure that everything is received properly. And then you're going to publish that, and this is how you have your dynamic XML sitemap that you would now basically go to subfold. You will go to your endpoint, you will copy that endpoint, and then you would basically paste that endpoint in here, save that, and you would have to save this under the path sitemap.xml, and you would have to add the link prefix of sitemap.xml, because if you submit this now to Google, you need to submit this under your own domain. You cannot tell Google api.wizddev.com or api.xano.com or something like this. You have to give it your domain. So this is how we're going to use subfolds folders to have this white labeled for your domain. So Google sees, oh, perfect, it's on your domain. Now, if you have 35,000 blog posts, this may not be a setup that you should adapt one-to-one like this. You could technically turn this into a cron job that runs every hour and populates a text field in your Xano database, and just then create a simple API endpoint that will only return the file for this specific row in the database without having to do the looping as you call it. Because if you have a lot of data, it may take a few seconds and then it may not be fully optimized for those web crawlers. So you could turn this example I'm going to put in the snippet as a Xano snippet in the description down below. You can just turn that into a background task, have that run every minute, every hour, however you like, and then have that all indexed by Google as well, but have that initial endpoint work way faster because you then just don't have to populate everything. You just go back to the latest populated version when giving this to Google. But it will work like this anyway, but it just may be that way that it takes some time to load, and that maybe if you have 35,000 blog posts, a little bit of a trouble for Google, or not really a trouble, but it would be more work for Google. So you could also turn this into a background task to just make it easier for Google. But yeah, that is basically the whole principle, how you can create dynamic sitemaps in Wized and Webflow, and how you can get those pages also recognized by Google that they exist. And yeah, I hope that this really helped you, that you're going to be an SEO master after this. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all your support and all your wonderful comments and all your wonderful emails. Just thank you, and see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.